is we are going to be solving the same exact problem, but when we solve this same exact problem, we're doing it 3 different ways, okay? So the first way we're doing it is something called solving by graphing, which I personally think is the easiest way, all right? So all of you need a calculator. Go get a calculator. If you haven't got a calculator yet, go get a calculator. And then clear your memories. Everyone clear your memories. 2nd plus 7, 1, 2. So 2nd plus 7, 1, 2. Clear your memory. 2nd plus 7, 1, 2. If you're at home, do so as well. Second plus 7, 1, 2. Cooper, is that your alarm or is that your phone?
No, I started turning on ringer off.
Oh, how fun. Do you ever pick those up and just be like, and mess with them? My husband still does that. I get so embarrassed when he does it. I'm like, you are a 35-year-old grown man. Stop messing with people.
No, if like a company calls you trying to sell something, just tell them it's your birthday.
It's your birthday. Do they give you a free one? I've never tried that one. That's actually a great idea. All right. I was going to say, Cooper, if that's like your alarm, I don't think I would ever wake up from that. That just sounds too soothing. All right, so let's get started. This is what we did yesterday. So yesterday, one of the first things we learned was it asks you, tell whether the ordered pair is a solution. And then so what Miss Peterson, it was Miss Peterson teaching yesterday, said was basically all you have to do is take your X and take your Y and plug it into both equations. So when I said you have to show your work, some of you were like, oh, how do I show my work for this? All you're doing is plugging it into your equation. So like showing your work for this would be 2 times X, X is -2, minus Y, Y is -2. So normally whenever I plug numbers into my equation, I always want to put it in parentheses. When I type it in my calculator with parentheses, I never get any issues with that. How about, let's just say it that way. So let's do that then. So if I'm plugging in my X and my Y into my equation, I have 2 times -2 minus -2. It should equal -2 as my answer. And sure enough, it does. So it works. Okay, so far so good. Because remember, it has to work for both of them. If there's even one that it does not work for, then it would not work. So now my next one, I have X. X is -2 minus 2 times Y. Y is again -2. And
Why did you get X was -2?
because it says right here, X and your Y, it's -2 and -2.
Oh, we're still doing number 1.
Yes, we're still doing number 1. So now it should equal 2, but I don't know. So why don't we type that in, -2 minus 2, parentheses -2. You see how I'm literally just typing it in as one sentence? I'm not like separating the problem or anything. And it does. It equals 2. So since both of them work, then my final answer is yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. All right. I have to show you a video. When my youngest daughter was like 6 months old, we used to say yes to her like that in her face, and every time she would cry. And then we would stop, and then she would stop crying. And then we would do it like 10 seconds later, and then she would cry again. It was like the most evil thing, but it was the most hilarious thing. I have to find that video and I'll show you. Okay. Anyways. Moving on. Number 2, solve the system by graphing. So some of you yesterday were like, I don't have graph paper. How can I do this? So I was hoping that you realize that you have a graphing calculator, right? So this is what I'm going to teach all of you right now, because some of you were eyeballing it, but in the future, as in starting today, some of your answers might be decimals. So how do you get that exact answer? So all of you turn on your calculator. Hopefully you already hopefully you already cleared your memory. Go to the Y equals. Okay, so let's type in both of these equations. Okay, the first one is 2x minus 3. Remember, minus is not negative. Okay, minus is on the side, negative is on the bottom. So it's 2x minus 3. For those of you who don't know where the X button is, it's right here next to alpha. It's the X comma T comma O comma N. So that's the X button. So the first one is 2x minus 3. And then arrow down. The next one is x plus 6. all of you try this because I'm going to share with you a secret where your calculator can tell you the answer without you doing any work. Yes. All right, so we typed it in, yes? Okay, now hit graph. Yay, yay. Okay, so it looks like here's a picture of my two, and it looks like they're going to touch at about right here. But again, I can't really see it. And also, it's kind of grainy. So maybe what you want to do is you want to hit zoom out. So all of you hit zoom. Zoom is at the top. So hit zoom, arrow down to out, and then hit enter. So the biggest thing that everyone says is, I hit enter and it didn't zoom out. That's because you have to hit enter again. Guys, you have to hit enter twice. So hit enter one more time, and then it zooms out, and now you can see that it touched right here.
Did you know that if you use the arrows on the graph, that you take you to different points?
Yes, so Kip is saying, did you know that if I use these arrows, look, it's gonna take me to different points. It will, but Kip, you can't use that as trying to get your answer, because what if your answer is a decimal? What if it's like
I know,
8?
I just thought this was awesome.
Yes, but I'm forewarning all of you, don't use the arrows on your graph to get the answer, because if your answer is like 15.4 and then you arrow over it and you get like 15.2, that's wrong, right? Your arrows aren't exact. So how do you get this exact number? Because this is so zoomed out, I honestly can't count my tick marks. This is what you're gonna press. You're gonna hit second, and then calc.
Where's calc?
Calc is up here. It's the trace button. So second, calc, you want to calculate their point of intersection.
So intersect?
So intersect, hit enter. And then first curve, hit enter. Second curve, hit enter. Guess, you hit enter. So you hit enter 3 times. Yes, I will say it one more time. So hold on, ready? So let's say I'm back to this. I just got my picture. I zoomed out or I zoomed in or whatever I had to do. Now, let me say it again. You hit second and then calc. Calc is the trace button. It's on top. Okay, second, calc. Now intersect. So go down to number 5 to intersect. And then you hit enter, enter, enter. So first curve, enter. Second curve, enter. Guess, enter. So my final point of intersection is 9, 15. That is my answer without showing any work. Hooray. Rowan, question.
So the other way to do it is to.
Because it tells you on the
Hey,
bottom.
guys,
what
hush,
the point
hush,
is.
hush. Rowan, yes.
So the other way to do it is to plot to turn them both into y equals mx plus b formats, and then put them into y equals, and then look through the table.
Yes. So Rowan said, what if I forgot these buttons? Like, I don't remember what buttons I have to press. Well, you have another option. You can go second table and then keep on scrolling down. And do you see how at number 9, they both say 15? So 915, 915, that must be where they touch. But here's the thing, Rowan's way does not work if your answer is a decimal. If your answer is like 9.2, 15.1, that's where they intersect. Your table only does whole numbers. So sometimes that won't work. So really, in your best interest, memorize this process because that's how it's going to tell you the answer. Yes, Tina.
Like, on the level one, if it had a question like this, would we have to show our work or would we just put?
No. So on your level work, there is no work to show for this because you can just put it in your calculator, press the buttons, and get the answer. But hold on, you're going to have questions like this on your level work where you do have to show your work. Do you know what work you have to show?
Put it in y.
Put it in y equals form, right? You have to put it in y equals form. That's the work you're showing before you can put it in your calculator. Yes, Cameron?
Have you zoom out again?
Okay, so how do you zoom out? So let's go. So I'm going to hit zoom. Zoom is right here. This time I'm actually just going to zoom in because I want to just zoom back in. So zoom in, zoom out, same thing. Hit enter, and then you have to hit enter again. So this time it's super zoomed in. But I mean, so you just have to play around with your calculator. So let's say you do another problem. And if you do another problem, then these are your zoom settings. So if you messed up with your zoom settings and you want it to go back to normal, the thing that you normally do is just hit second plus 712, clear your memory, or you can go to your window. Window is the second button right here, window, and it should always say -10, 10, 1, -10, 10, 1, because it's saying my x-axis, go from -10 to +10 and count by ones. Here, go by -10 to +10 and count by ones. Your scale is how much you're counting by. So like, do you see how like for the x's, what if I want to go from -20 to +20, count by ones, and then here my y's, I want to go from -5 to +5 on the y-axis. You see how that changes my scale? That changes my window. Okay, but normally the default is always -10, 10, 1, -10, 10, 1. Okay, but if you don't remember that, that's okay. Just hit second plus 7, 1, 2, and then just start over from the beginning. Okay, so that's what you're doing today. I'm hoping that you will use your calculator to get all the answers because tomorrow it won't be that easy. Okay, tomorrow there's actually lots of work to show. All right, let's do number 3. Word problems. This is a chapter where you have lots of word problems and they give you the word problems and you have to figure out and write your own equations, and that's the hard part, okay? So for number 3, it says Rob has 14 pens and markers. He has 6 more markers than pens. How many of each item does Rob have? So maybe the first thing you have to do is you have to realize you have 2 equations. So I'm going to write 2 equal signs because I know that this chapter I'm always going to have 2 equations because I want to know where they meet. Okay, so Rob has 14 pens and markers. He has 6 more markers than pens. All right, maybe we have to, first of all, assign x's and y's. Let's say pens are x's, markers are y's. Because if I write P and M, when I try to graph it in my calculator with a P and an M, it gets super, super confusing. Like in your brain, it's like X, Y, what's P, what's M, what's X, what's Y. So let's just say from now on, pencils is, or pens is X, markers and Y. And if you really wanted to reverse them, it doesn't matter. Sure, you could do that too. All right, he has 14 of them total. So total, doesn't he have 14 total? So doesn't it equal 14? Well, he has 14 what? Pens and markers. So his x's and y's equal 14. So does it make sense that x plus y equals 14? His pens plus his markers give him 14 total.
Wait, but if he had 14 of each, does he have 14 of each or 14 of each?
No, it just says 14 pens and markers. The end. Not 14 of each, just 14 pens and markers. Now, he has 6 more markers, markers are y, than pens. Pens are x's. So this is where it always becomes tricky. He has 6 more markers than pens. So I'll tell you right now, there's an x on one side, there's a y on the other because you're comparing them, but he has 6 more. So on one of these sides, you have to write plus 6. Do you think you know? And this always messes kids up. Like they always get confused with this one. They always reverse it. He has 6 more markers, which is the y, than pens, which is the x.
Plus 6, well,
Reed, what do you think?
X1 or no? X6.
So x plus 6, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is right. But everyone's like, no, it's the y, because he has 6 more markers. 6 more markers, markers is y. That means it's plus 6. No. So you kind of have to think opposite. If he has 6 more markers, doesn't that mean that that's the bigger number? So don't you have to add 6 to the smaller number to get the bigger number, right? In other words, maybe think of it this way. Let's say he has like 7 markers. If he has 7 markers, that means he has 1 pen, right? Because he has 6 more markers than pens. So don't you have to add 6 to the smaller number, in which case is the pens, to get 7 as your total? Yes, Vaughn?
Write it in standard form and then like convert that to, wouldn't it also be y minus x equals 6?
Yes, you could. I think that way is not as obvious to some kids, so I didn't write it. But Vaughn, you're right, and you can do it that way too. That works. Okay, so at this point, I want to know how many of each item does Rob have. So I need to graph these 2 lines for y and then solve it. Find their point of intersection. So let's solve for y. So for this one, if I solve for y, wouldn't I just subtract x on both sides? So isn't this equation y equals 14 minus x? That's my first equation. Does that make sense? I'm solving for y so I can graph it.
oh, we're talking.
Right? Because you want to solve for y so you can put it in your calculator so you can just get the answer. For this one, oh, it already solved for y. Yay. Okay, so that's my equation. Y equals x plus 6. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put it in my calculator, and I have y equals 14 minus x for the first one. The second one, I'm going to do y equals x plus 6. So all of you practice typing this in, okay? Because it's kind of like the more you practice pressing the buttons, the more you'll remember which buttons to press. So type in both equations. Now remember, we go to graph. You want to see the picture first. So it looks like my answer is right there. That's where the two lines touch. I really don't have to zoom out because I can see it on my screen right now.
Wait, if you were zoomed out and you just hit zoom in once, does it zoom into the original?
It should, but sometimes your settings mess up. Okay, so here were the buttons again, okay? So maybe you want to write it on your paper somewhere if you can't remember. Second, calc, intersect, enter, 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 and it will always say intersection as your final answer.
The y-intercept 3.0967.
But that's not what we're looking for, right? We're looking for the point of, okay, we're looking for the point of intersection, which is 4, 10. Do we see that on our calculator? If you're having trouble typing it in, please let me know. So my answer is not 4, 10. I mean, it's 99% there, but I didn't finish it because it said how many of each. So I have to write, he has blankety blank pens. He has blankety blank markers. So with 4, 10, isn't this my X and my Y? My points are always X, Y. So he has 4 X's, and X's are pens, and he has 10 Y's, and Y's are markers. So this is your answer, guys. Don't write it as a point. We don't know what that means. Write it out with the actual words. Garrett?
How do you type it into the calculator for the y equals squared?
Okay, so you go like this. Second, calc, intersect, enter, enter, enter.
No, like type it in.
Oh, okay. So you just go to the y equals, and then you just type in what you see. And then the X button is right here. The X, T, O, N. That's the X button. It's right next to alpha. Okay. So we're just going to do one more because I want to give you time. 4 or 5? Which one do you want to do? 5. All right. Let's do number 5. Number 5. All right. So this one is where I think you have decimals as your answers. So you really can't do anything but use your calculator. Your calculator is the only way that you can get your answer. Okay. You can't even use the table because the table gives you whole numbers. So let's solve by graphing. All right, so let's do this one first. So remember, I still have to show my work because I have to solve for y, right? That's how I can show my work for these problems. So I have 4.2x minus y equals 3. So let's solve for y. What do you think is the easiest thing to do? Luis? Okay, so you can subtract 4.2x, and then you would have to divide by -1, right? Some people just don't like this -1 part. For me personally, and Luis, you're right. I mean, you can totally do it that way. But for me personally, because I just have a minus y, I'm actually going to add y to the other side. But again, Luis and I would get the same answer. Okay, so there's many ways that I can solve here. So 4.2x equals 3 plus y. And then I would subtract both sides by 3, right, just to get y by itself. So I have y equals 4.2x minus 3. That's my first equation. But again, if you wanted to do it Luis's way and you wanted to subtract 4.2 and then divide by -1, you could do that and you should come out with the same answer as this one. All right. So for this one, what do you guys want to do first? I'll take whatever suggestion you have. What did you say? Add y. Okay, but again, if you wanted to subtract 2x on both sides, you can do that too. But I personally think that adding y, just so you have a positive y, makes more sense to me. And it might not make sense to you, so do it the other way. That's fine. Okay, and then you have to add 0.3, add 0.3. So you have 2x plus 0.3 equals y.
Yeah, that's why you're adding. If you add 0.3, it gets rid of 0.3, but it adds 0.3 to the other side.
Correct. So now here are your two equations. So now what you can do is you can graph it. Okay, you can't do this by hand. You haven't learned how to do this by hand. We'll learn how to do it by hand tonight. Yay! So type in your equations. Okay, hit graph. So it hits right here. Yes, Sienna?
When we do learn how to do it by hand, do we have to do it that way or through?
Yes. So Sienna asked a good question. When we do learn how to do it by hand, do we have to do it that way or can we just do it this way? You have to know how to do it all the ways. Okay. Just so you know. And then on the STAR test, you might be like, well, the STAR test is mostly multiple choice. How do they know which way I do it? Because the STAR test, like their answer choices, A, B, C, D, will be like, which work is the correct work if I solve it this way? So you still have to know how to do it because you have to see if their work is right. Okay, so here's where they intersect. I go second, calc, intersect, enter, enter, enter. You see how I have decimals as answers? So I can't do it any other way. I couldn't look at the table because my table only gives me whole numbers. 1.5 comma 3.3. That is my final answer. And then that's it. Okay, before I let you go, take out your level work really quick, and I'm just going to circle for you the questions that you do need to show your work on, just so there is no issues, okay? So you know. Number 1, number 2, show your work. Guys, for 3 and 4, it just says look at the picture to find the answer. 3 and 4 should take you like 2 seconds to do total, right? Number 5 and 6, you have to graph them. So just make sure you show your work by actually graphing them. So yeah, you could put it in your calculator and get the answer, but we are asking you to show your work by graphing them too. Okay, backside, 7 and 8, you have to show your work by solving for y. And then 9 and 10. Okay, let me try 9 and start 10 with you, just so, because 9 and 10, the word problems are always the hardest. Okay, number 9, you sell bracelets for $2 each and necklaces for $3 each at a local flea market. You collect $95, selling a total of 37 jewelry items. How many of each type? So you have to get 2 equations. So remember, if you have 2 equations, I always write 2 equal signs. Now, when I set this up, because we're going to be setting things up like this for like the next, I don't know, week or so, week and a half, I always want to write my totals. So it looks like I have $2, $3, $95, 37. What is a total in here? Like it equals something. 95. You see how it equals 95 total? So that's one of them. There's another total number, 37. You have a total of 37. Hey. Thank you. Okay, Mason, can you give me 2 minutes? Okay, so now I know that 95 is dollars, so this one must talk about dollars, and this one talks about items. So I have $2, $3. You see how the dollars go with the dollars? So 2 and 3 go with the one that says 95 because they all talk about money. Does that make sense? Like money goes with money. So I sell bracelets, let's just say that's X, and necklaces, let's just say that's Y. So can't I say that 2X, because $2 for each bracelet, plus 3Y, because $3 for each necklace equals 95. Okay, this is the one that everyone always gets confused with. They're like, there's no more numbers in here. How do I know that it equals 37? There's no numbers here to put in here. I sell a total of 37 jewelry items. I sell 37 of what? X's and Y's. I sell bracelets and I sell necklaces to get 37 items total. So that's how I get my last one. Even though there's no more numbers in here, that's how I can get my last equation. So solve for Y with your solve for Y by hand, then by your calculator, get the answer. So like for this one, it says, write the linear equation that represents the area Y of the rectangle. So you have your 2 equations, Y equals blah, 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 Y equals blah, blah, blah. Find the areas. How do I find the area of a rectangle? Length times width. So isn't this length times width? So isn't it 4 times x plus 1? So I would distribute. So isn't my first equation y equals 4x plus 4? So do the same thing with this one. Find this area by doing length times width and distributing, and those are your 2 equations that you can then pop into your calculator. Okay, that is all. Ladies